So Deion Sanders has been offered and has accepted the Colorado job, and video of him talking to the team will be played at the end. But I gotta say, this whole situation showed me a whole lot about where we are as black folk. First of all, we get real mean and disrespectful when somebody does something that we don't like. All of a sudden, we got all these negative things to say about them and their character. We want to diminish their accomplishments, act like they ain't done nothing. We want to talk bad about their children. Like that's pretty extreme. Like this revealed a lot about us. Like I see how we act towards people when they don't do what we want them to do. Also, I see the delusion in a lot of us. Oh, we acting like the HBCU is a stepping stone. We acting like the SWAC is a stepping stone. We acting like Colorado is that much of a step up from the SWAC. Listen, at a certain point, black folk, we got to be honest. When it comes to Division I sports conferences, what conference would you put the SWAC over other than the MEAC? I'm going to ask you that again. When it comes to Division I sports conferences, what conference would you put the SWAC over other than the MEAC? Would you put this, come on now. Would you put the SWAC over the Mountain West? Would you put it over the American East? Would you put it over the AAC? Would you put it over the Sun Belt Conference? Would you put it over the CAA? Come on now. The truth of the matter is this. We are at the bottom of FCS schools, and Colorado is part of the Power 5 of FBS schools. So going from Jackson State to Colorado is a huge step up. There is no way around that. That's a fact. Part of the reason why that's a fact is we are not doing our part. And that's what this Deion thing exposed to me. As black folk, we rely too much and put too much weight on the shoulders of a handful of people instead of the collective of us pulling our own weight. It's too many of us sitting around talking about what Deion should have done, what Deion could have done. What are we doing? Deion did his part. He came in, he made Jackson State a household name. He got HBCU game day to come to Jackson State. He brung in top national recruits. And most importantly, he won. He's dominated the SWAC the past 2 years. He's brung in certain partnerships. He's given back salary to upgrade the facilities at Jackson State. And people talking about he ain't SWAC and he ain't. Listen, if he ain't SWAC, what does that say about those who are SWAC? In 3 years, he's done more than a lot of people that quote unquote are SWAC and been there 10, 20 years. Compare Jackson State's facilities to some of the other teams in the SWAC and the MEAC. Let's look at the partnerships that the SWAC and Jackson State have over the past few years to what they had 10 years prior to that. See, that's our problem. We want to put all this weight on the shoulders of a handful of people as opposed to all of us pulling our weight. What do I mean by us pulling our weight? I mean, let us tell it. There's a big community of us that support HBCU sports and have been doing so for a long time. Well, if that's the case, there shouldn't be an issue here. Because we should be ready to step into the gap and keep this momentum going and keep this train running and keep taking HBCU sports higher and higher. If that's the case, unfortunately, the truth is this. There's way too many of us pointing the finger, got an issue with Deion Sanders about what he didn't do, and we're not even doing our part. How many of us go to regular season games other than homecoming? If we're going to keep it real, oftentimes when our teams finally get good and start making the playoffs, especially at the D2 level, the attendance for the playoff game is lower than the homecoming game. So here it is, the team finally got good. You can finally have some pride in your school, and less if you go to the playoff game than you do to the homecoming game. Let's be real. How many of us been to spring games? How many football games do we go to a year? How many games do we stream a year? Do we pay for the streaming service that's provided by our conferences, our schools? How many of us are following HBCU sports leagues and teams on social media? How difficult is it to follow the SWAC, the MEAC, the CIAA, the SEAC? To like their posts, to share the post on your story. How hard is it to follow all of these, the Claflins, the Tuskegees, the Miles Colleges, the Albany States, the Bowies, the Virginia States, the Virginia Unions, the Fayettevilles? How hard is it to follow these schools and like and repost their stories? The CIAA championship was ended on a walk-off field goal this year. How many of us retweeted that, liked that, shared that? That was an entertaining ending for Division II HBCU football. How many of us talked about that? Come on now. How many of us watch the championship games at HBCUs? Did you watch the SEAC championship? The MEAC championship? Did you watch the CIAA championship? Come on now. We want our stuff to be on the same level as everybody else's, but what work are we putting in? How many of us are active in an alumni association? Going to meetings, starting chapters, paying dues, promoting the school, promoting the university. It's basketball season now. Have any of us been to a basketball game on campus this year yet? Uh-oh. How many games have you streamed of the basketball team this year? Uh-oh. When the school wins, when the team wins, how often do you like the post or retweet come on now. Even when it's not your school, when you see different schools upsetting and getting big wins off of schools that have been deemed to be bigger and better prestigious programs, how often do you share those stories? For example, Jackson State basketball just beat SMU. How many of you like that story? How many of you even seen it or knew about it? You see what I'm saying? You want to take it to the next level, and you want kids to play at the school, but you're not even going to the games. How often, especially at the Division II level, how often do we sell out our stadiums? Never. And in a lot of our D2 schools, the stadium is not that huge. Like, I'll take Bowie, for example, my alma mater. We don't sell out the stadium. What we do, like a lot of schools do, we fill up our side of the stadium. We fill up the home side of the stadium. The visitor side, it'll be like 100 people over there. But if we was really about it, we'd fill out the entire stadium, the home side and the smaller visitor side. We fill out the whole thing. It would only be a few thousand people. Fill out the stadium. If you want HBCU sports to matter, and you want young brothers to consider coming to HBCUs, it has to matter to you. You're not following the social media. You're not liking the posts. You're not sharing the posts. You're not going to the games. You're not streaming the games. You're not paying for the streaming services. You're not a part of an alumni association. You're not giving any money. The truth is, a lot of us, we don't take pride in our stuff. Not enough pride to actively get involved and contribute. That's what this Deion Sanders thing exposed to me. That most of us, myself included, we are not carrying our weight. We do not support and promote and act like HBCUs are as important as we claim for them to be. Don't sit up there and tell me HBCUs are so important to you. And here it is, Benedict had an undefeated season. They were whooping up on people. They got a number 1 seed in the bye in the D2 playoffs, and you weren't cheering them on, didn't even watch the game. Come on now. Benedict was doing their thing. And maybe a little bit more support could have took them over the hump, and maybe they could have really made some noise in the D2 playoffs and maybe won a Division II national championship. But where was everybody? Huh? Come on now. Some of you, like myself, you have a bunch of different HBCUs within a few hours of you. Like I'm in the DMV, so I got Morgan, Howard, of course, Bowie, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, Coppin, Delaware State. I got quite a few HBCUs close to me, as many of you do. How many of those campuses have you visited? I'm not talking about going to their homecoming. How many times have you said, oh, Howard versus such and such is playing at this place? Oh, I need to go check that out. That's gonna be a good HBCU experience. How many times have you done that? The fact of the matter is this. Most of us don't go to nearly enough games. We're not a part of any alumni association. We don't give any money. We don't follow any of our sports leagues or teams on social media. We are literally doing hardly anything other than going to homecoming.